for joining and investing your time for this webinar. I hope you'll find this webinar interesting, worth the time invested, and will take home some lessons learned from the wild truly with you. Before I introduce the speaker, whom I know you're excited to listen to, let me take a moment to tell you just a little bit about Bileeta. This webinar is hosted and brought to you by Bileeta. Bileeta is a 100% Sri Lankan-owned ERP solutions company, proudly the #1 Sri Lankan ERP provider. Bileeta has a great history and a journey of 11 plus years delivering enterprise solutions to customers, helping them to automate their organizations, making valuable data readily available for better decision making through advanced technology. Built Intuition, the ERP solution is implemented across various industries with over 100 implementations locally and internationally and over 5,000 active users. Among many initiatives Bileeta is taking to share the best practices, updating new technologies to all our stakeholders, today's webinar comes in a bit of a different theme altogether. 3 completely different things: the wild, the technology, and management. And today we have the best person to share how these 3 things together can help you adapt, understand, and appreciate the inevitable change. So to speak of the speaker today, Sarath Perera is an award-winning global marketer, author, keynote speaker, consultant, and an athlete. Multi-talented he is, a good friend of mine as well. He turned a simple hobby of traveling and wildlife into a book, naming it Management from the Wild, 101 Lessons Learned. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Sarath to take you from here to talk about adapting the inevitable change from lessons learned from the wild. And if you have any questions at the end, please feel free to note it down and we'll have a Q&A sessions. So Sarath, over to you.
Hello, is it working? I suddenly lost connection.
You're audible now.
Fantastic. All right.
So maybe we could, Sarath, give few more minutes before we start. There are a lot of people joining.
Sure.
All used to being the Sri Lankan time. So when we say 4:15, it's generally 4:30, I guess. All right, so before Sarath starts in a minute, I just want to recap and give a quick introduction to Sarath again for those who joined a little later. So Sarath, again, sorry for those who heard, you are going to hear it back again. Sarath is a global marketer, author, keynote speaker, a consultant, and an athlete. He's multi-talented, and he's turned his hobby of traveling and his interest in the wild, and he's converted that into a book, and he's named it as the Management from the Wild 101 Lessons Learned. And today he's going to talk about bringing the wild, the technology, and management together, and how we can adapt and understand and anticipate the inevitable change from lessons learned from the wild. So Sarath, over to you, and we can start.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Priyanka. A very good morning, afternoon, and a very good night to few of you all who might be joining this webinar from different time zones. I'm assuming you all can see my screen. Excellent. So, thank you for that introduction. Something that I would like to straight away deep dive is lessons learned from the wild. An interesting take, a passion which turned out to be more than a passion. Something that I really enjoy and I look forward to. Absolutely waiting until the pandemic ends so I can start travel at least locally to start off with. So again, with the introduction, lessons learned from the wild, adapting your organization to the inevitable change. So I'm just trying to make it interactive as possible. I'm going to share life experiences. I'm going to share interesting facts on the wild and how I can relate that into change. Now, speaking of change, simply put, it is something inevitable. We would want things not to change, but we have no choice. But in the choice where we don't adapt for change, there can be certain consequences as well. So let's dig a bit deeper into the discussion. What I will cover today is change in new product development, change in communication, change in technology, change in leadership, change in crisis, change in culture, and change in brand management.
Sorry to interrupt. I think there's a small network connection. It's dropping a little bit. Just want to let you know. There's a small interruption. We can't hear you clearly.
Is it better now?
Yeah, great.
Yeah, please do interrupt at any given point if you all feel like the connections aren't great. This is something that we have to adapt. The inevitable change, working, studying, and doing sessions from home. Excellent. So having said that, again, these are the areas that we will be venturing into today. So I'll start off with an interesting story. Speaking of change, so before talking about change, what I want to really inbuilt and really explain is the fact that lessons can be learned not just from the wild, but from any experience that we may deal with in day-to-day life. So I'm just going to share one story, and this is a picture that I have taken, and here hippopotamus who's looking at me was the animal which attacked our boat. So the story goes as we were in Kenya in 2016. We had a steady schedule. We had an agenda. We had something that we had pre-planned. We were visiting Masai Mara, Lake Naivasha, Amboseli. So we had a set agenda. Now in the agenda, there was a talk that we had with few locals there where they suggested, hey, you should actually do this interesting safari, this boat safari to see these hippos. I mean, all is up for adventure. We said, why not? I mean, we had spent a lot of money. It was not in the agenda, but it was just a small fee to incur. So we went ahead with it. Why? To our surprise, now when they said boat safari, the previous day I started Googling as well hippo safaris, and I saw big boats and I saw small boats, and I was like, surely we are not going to go on a small boat. So interestingly, when we went there, it was this really small boat where just 4 of us could fit in, and then there was one guy who was controlling it with a small motor. Now, to my surprise, seeing the boat, while we were going on the safari, we kind of came close to these monsters, if you may, and I was scared because the previous day I had googled and it showed that hippos are very territorial and they do attack. And this guy was constantly staring at us, and I just at the instant I told I don't like the way he's looking. The safari guy also said, don't worry, I got this under control. And at one point our boat got stuck. And at that very instance, this guy just attacked our boat. It came from nowhere, and this is a real picture. And this was the last picture I took before considering, do I jump off the boat or what do I do? Like, that was the first time I really thought that was the end. That was it. Because I still remember it opening its mouth and just about to attack the boat. To our surprise, the guy who was maneuvering the boat had a stick which he was using to move the boat. He used that as a weapon just to attack the animal. It just knocked close to its eye. So just because of that impact, sudden impact, it turned back and want to attack us again. At that point, we were able to adjust the boat and we left. Now, why I shared this story was, this story actually started with a lot of lessons, and this is the starting point for the discussion today. So again, a hippo is probably about 4,000 kilos roughly, a male hippo. So just to break down the story, so we had a fixed schedule. but we wanted it to change. So the lesson there is be open for change, because if you want to experience something new, you have to be open to change. Now, before actually exploring and going ahead with it, I actually did the research. I googled hippo safaris and it looked interesting. So before anything, the lesson there is before any big decision, you need to be informed. So you need to do your research. Again, I had googled hippo attacks like I said, but I need to overcome fear. You need to know what it is and also to understand what are the risks you are taking. Now, the surprise was when it comes to last minute plans, there's always going to be pleasant and unpleasant surprises. The unpleasant surprise clearly was the small boat and the hippo attack. Now, again, in life, where it comes to that point where you need to know where you draw the line. I at one point told the safari ranger, it's enough, shall we go? I'm scared. I genuinely was scared. And I'm open about it. And his words were, don't worry, let's stay a little longer. So in life, you need to know when to quit. Now, I'm saying a lot of these stories just from one incident, following through all the lessons that I'm going to impart here. So again, then he was able to use a stick, which was not to attack an animal, but to maneuver the boat. So sometimes, in certain instances, a key resource can be used differently. You'd always think in that context. And another important lesson that I learned there was, after all what happened once we came out, I realized that hippo attacked our boat because its baby had been killed by fishermen accidentally by trying to fish. So with a fishing net, the baby had been killed, and this animal was vicious because of that reason. So there is always a backstory for any issue. And the most important thing is you should not regret. Now, I do not regret the decision that I took to go on that boat, because that gave me a life lesson and a life experience. So with that, straight away go into our first area, change in new product development. Now, this is a very interesting area because, as most of you all know, this is the wildebeest. For few of you all who didn't know, I'm just saying wildebeest is something that all wildlife enthusiasts love. Why is that? Because of the Great Migration. The Great Migration is basically where we find these wildebeest in millions crossing Tanzania to Kenya. So that's from Serengeti to Masai Mara. Now, the lesson that I want to impart here is these wildebeest have a journey that they do. They have a circular migration which never stops. So you see the time patterns where August, roughly June, July, August is the time period where migration happens. And why it's quite famous around the world is the fact that at that point they have to cross rivers, they have to cross certain terrains where you see a lot of attacks where lions wait to attack, because millions of wildebeest at one given point they quickly go and attack. Crocodiles attack these animals. So a lot of the action is there during the migration. But it's not the migration that I want to focus here on. Now, what's interesting is these animals never stop their motion. So they continuously throughout the year they travel. They continuously go. It's similar to a product, similar to a brand, or to a person. There is constant movement. But what's interesting here is with time, the wildebeest babies, they adapted something. What they adapted was, as soon as they are born, they are able to walk, and in a few hours they are able to run. Now, why did this change happen was to sustain, to live longer, and that is because if not, an animal would come and kill it. Now, this happens to most other animals because, as you know, babies, when we are born, we can barely walk, crawl, we can just cry, and that's until about 1 or 2, 3 years till we can start to figure out how to walk. running starts much later, but it's very different. Now, this lesson cannot be implemented across all the corporates, but what is very important is to adapt this change to adapt the product, the offering. If not, what will happen is if you don't evolve, if your offerings don't evolve, cliche as it may sound, companies or brands such as Yahoo, Motorola, BlackBerry, you will be inevitably you will move out of the market because you fail to change your product offering. Now the same goes to people. Now if we don't adapt to the current context, now that's why people invest in degrees, masters, PhDs is because they are adding value, they are changing their setup to be better equipped. So complacent actually leads to death, and that goes across us as well. Corporates which are complacent with one product without evolving the product will not progress, eventually come to the inevitable death. So that is one important lesson. Now, with the Bileeta is another thing that I created a diagram, small matrix for us to understand this change in new product development, how does it reflect to us? Now, again, like I mentioned, it will differ from a company to company or from industry to industry. Now, where competition is low and the demand is low, you'll always just sustain the product. You will not make major changes because there's nothing much you'll do. You'll probably change the packaging, have the same product, and you'll still succeed. But in the context where the competition is really high, but the demand is low, you want to differentiate. So you might differentiate through your brand or your product offering. So a unique selling proposition, it can be a feature, it can be ingredient, and that's how we are going to differentiate. Now, applying that in the context where the demand is high and the competition is low. Now, understanding where the demand is high, for you to sustain your position without competition overwhelming you is where you invest in R&D and product modification. Now, again, like I mentioned, you have to put this in the context of your organization and also the industry that you are in. And where the competition is high and the demand is high, very rightly you will look at research and development, you look at identifying a USP and a brand differentiator because you need to have market leadership. But having market leadership with brand is not sufficient unless you constantly evolve and upgrade yourself. So the first lesson is the change in new product development. So that's an area which we will probably capture again if you have any questions at the end of the session. Another very interesting area is change in communication. Now today I'm having this webinar over the computer. If it was any other day or any other year, it was in 2019, 18, I would have been doing this face to face. So change in communication happens, but what I want to share is the lessons I learned while I was in the wild. So what you see in front of you are rhinoceros. Now again, there are 5 types of rhinoceros, not that anyone will be too interested, but I'll just explain the types. You have the African, you have the black rhino and the white rhino. And then again in Asia, you have the Sumatra rhinoceros, the Indian and the Java. So there are 5 types, but what is interesting is for communication generally, rhinos, they speak, they move, they snort, they growl, they make different noises for communication. But the white rhinoceros, this white rhinoceros uses a different way of communication as well. Interestingly, they use their feces, the dung. That's a bulletin board for them. So if someone is sick, if someone is ready to mate, if someone is dominant and wants to attack, they leave that message in their poop. So someone traveling sniffs the poop, they know what the message is. So basically it's a bulletin board. Very different way of doing it. So communication can be very different in how we want to do it. Now before I dig deep into the lesson itself, changing communication, I just want to clarify. Most of the time, whenever I say there are 2 types of rhinoceros in Africa, the white and the black, they straightaway say, oh, so one is white and the other one is black. Well, I'm laughing now, but that was one of the questions I also asked when I was in Kenya. And no, it's not the color, it's the body shape, and it's different, completely different areas why they are called it white and black rhinoceros, which is not relevant to the color. But I thought I should mention that given the fact that people might misinterpret it. Now, having said that, the rhinoceros using their own dung as a bulletin board shows us communication can be done in different ways for different instances. Now, when a rhinoceros is face to face, they are not going to use their dung as a communication tool. They will communicate. But when they are not there, pass on a message, they use that. Now, in the current context, look at organizations. What are the means of communication that they do? There is B2B, that's business to business. Then there is B2C, business to consumer. Then there is B2E, business to employee. And then there is C2C, colleague to colleague. So now these are few different ways of communication. Now, communication, if you look at it, there can be daily means of communication for operational matters or for marketing matters in terms of promoting a business. And so if you look at it right now in this era, we have things as programmatic marketing, we have digital advertising, we have completely different ways of communicating, which is cost efficient and effective. Now, let me put this question to you all. 5 years ago, when there was WhatsApp groups in organizations, HR used to send an email saying there cannot be WhatsApp groups which is outside or inside the company because they felt it was not a professional platform. They felt it wasn't a secure platform, and we were told to avoid WhatsApp and WhatsApp to be done with friends only. But today, where are we? Some boards have their discussions on WhatsApp. It has evolved so drastically. So what I want to draw is, now again, I have done a small diagram here which I want to take you all through. Again, looking at the urgency and complexity, how things have changed. Now, if something is not complex and not urgent, now you just send an email or you just post a letter because you really don't, it's not urgent nor complex. You just say, now email used to be the most important means of communication. It is not. Now again, don't get me wrong, again, organization to organization, industry to industry, depending on what sort of a business you're in, might change. But what is interesting is, if the urgency is high and the complexity is low, you might just put it on text message because it's easier to message. It might be someone to join this webinar. So you just drop a message, hey, quickly join the webinar, a text message, a WhatsApp, a quick phone call, or you just get everyone to a meeting and say, okay guys, just to inform you all, this is the new process we are going to go ahead with. It's not complex, you're just giving an announcement. Now in the area where the complexity is high and the urgency is low, you might just organize a face-to-face meeting or an online session, or you use your desk phone in office and you just call and say, hey, because you can't write it on an email because it's complex, but it's not urgent. It might be a board meeting which needs further changes, where it needs to be communicated with other stakeholders. It can be complex, but not urgent. So you will just use the desk phone to communicate, but you'll always follow up with an email. Follow up with an email. You won't start with an email because the urgency is low. Now, when it comes to complexity, there it's high and the urgency is high. You're always not ever gonna put it on a text message, no matter how, because you can't explain something complex over a text message because the way you interpret it, straight away you will do a phone call or you request for a meeting face to face or offline and follow up with an email, and depending on how complex the issue is, you follow up with a letter. And this is how businesses have evolved. Like I said, WhatsApp groups from 2016 to today plays a pivotal role. With the lockdown, how WhatsApp became a means of communication, and our understanding of how an email comes into formality against other means of communication. So this is the change in communication. Now let's look at change in technology, another interesting area. So what you have here is flamingos, and if you all have not seen flamingos, if you are lucky during the season, you might see them in Mena. Sri Lanka is blessed in that way, or sometimes in Bundala. Again, if not in Jaffna. Now, why I mentioned 3 different locations and why change in technology? How does it relate here? So these guys keep migrating between Africa, Southern Europe, and in certain parts of Asia. So there are certain times that they'll come to Bundala. There are certain instances they'll go to Jaffna, or they might go to Mena. Again, that depends on the salt concentration and the food that they had in that specific area. Now, why it's relevant to technology. Now, changing technology is that they know where there will be the most resource, where it will be more efficient for them, where they'll have about 100, 200 in a flock, where they have enough food to consume. Now, if they go to a specific location and the food is only enough for 2-3 days, it won't work, because these guys generally stay for 3 to 4 months in a specific location. So they have to invest in the right place. Now that applies to technology as well. In the context, let's say, if an organization, for example, has X amount of output or productivity for that matter, and a change in technology allows them 10 X plus 10. In a year, you have a 3,600 plus productivity from using the new technology, because X plus 10. Now, same goes for any technology. So businesses need to realize what technology they invest in and how timely that technology is. Now, a company moving from a letter to an email is not a technology upgrade. Technically, yes, but in terms of how you make yourself more efficient, what are the systems out there? I think in the start, Pumika spoke about the ERP systems. Now, certain aspects in businesses where not the blue chip companies, even startups can invest in these certain technologies, ERPs. So changing technology really puts you in a place how long you run in the market. Now, if the flamingos go to a specific area where the salt concentration is low, where their food is not sufficient, they can't stay for too long, they'll move from there and they won't come there again. So that's why organizations and environmentalists are quite concerned about certain construction in specific areas where the salt concentration doesn't change, because that changes the pattern of these animals. So changing technology is extremely pivotal. Changing leadership. This is fundamentally important today. The leadership our parents or the previous generation had to now is completely different. One of the best lessons you can learn on leadership are from these geezers. An interesting fact is this flying pattern from small days, I think we all have seen, or we've always seen it movies, or it could have been in a cartoon, but we've always told this is the way that they do. And it's interesting because when they fly in this pattern, they have a flying range of 71% that they can get, 71% more flying range as a team. Now, again, here is together stronger and better longevity. Now, leaders who think that they can run organizations with the power, the control that they have will not last long. Where they believe that the team together is stronger, they succeed. And that's why you see most Fortune organization leaders, instead of playing a pivotal role in decision making, they empower and they embrace leadership and they cascade their leadership skills into the next tier. And in an organization, there shouldn't be one leader. The CEO is not the leader, a manager is a leader, assistant manager is a leader. Everyone plays a leadership role. So you have to understand how the dynamics work. Now here what is interesting is also, when in this format, when these geese fly, the highest tension is to the guy in front. So when he's tired, he moves back to the line and someone takes his place. So what does that tell us? Load sharing, humility. Right now, a leader needs to be humble enough to understand, okay, I can't, now someone else needs to take. I will take a back step, but I will be with the team. That's where leadership has changed today. Another interesting thing these geezers do is, it's a bit annoying, to be very honest. You're constantly hearing them making this noise which I can't replicate, constant nagging. They just keep shouting. And for us, it looks like a nag and annoying. But the reality is, these guys motivate each other with what they say. Take instance, if you all go to a gym, sometimes you see these guys just pumping others saying, you got this, you got this. You really motivate a person with verbal support. In an organization now, if a leader fails to motivate the employees by complimenting or addressing certain areas they need to improve, they will never improve. So constant motivation is a critical factor. And also an important thing is, in this structure, how they fly, there is top-down visibility, and actually all these geese can see the front, so they actually know where the organization is going because it's visible. In certain organizations, where the leader sees, okay, the vision and mission, that's for them. This is how I see the organization, and it has to go my way, and does not share with the team. The team doesn't know where they're going ahead. So it's very important. Final lesson. If one of these geese gets sick or is shot down, two from the pack leaves the pack, falls down to check on the sick or the injured geese, or the goose for that matter. They wait with that injured animal until it cannot move or until it dies. But the pack continuously goes. The pack doesn't stop. The two people stop, they review, they check what can be done. And if you can't support, they'll just join another pack and continue their movement. What is interesting is, when a person is down, to first see, you need a leader to take a step back, understand what's wrong, and try to support. So these are some of the interesting areas, because in this era, people don't work for bosses anymore. They work for leaders. And they proudly say, oh, I work for XYZ. Oh, I work for, they don't say the company name. Sometimes it might be, oh, I work for, you mention a leader's name, your superior's name. So you understand, change in leadership from back then to today has drastically changed. And then there are again numerous leadership styles, which I will not get into. I really don't believe in too much theory. So that's why my lessons, wherever I can impart, is on something that I've learned from the wild, so it's easy to relate. But again, there are different leadership styles, which each one might be different in how you might approach it. Again, a leadership style may differ from industry to industry. Changing crisis. Now, crisis don't come and tell us, okay, this is the issue. Crisis never comes announced. It always comes unannounced. Now, I'm going to share an interesting story. Again, this is a picture that I took. So, funnily enough, another story where I almost died. So, this happened in Nepal. So, this is called the one-horned rhinoceros. In Nepal, where we went to Badia, and after we finished our trek in the national park, we went to the buffer zone. Now, there are a few people called rangers, and then there are trackers. Trackers are the guys who take you on the safari, walking safari. Rangers are the guys who basically know the buffer zones, and they take care of the buffer zone. So, interestingly, we suggested, shall we do a trek in the buffer zone? So, with us, the tracker went and the ranger also went. So, three of us were there, myself, my cousin Sohan, and my good friend Kunal. So all of us while we were walking, we were attempting to find a mother and a baby rhinoceros. So they had been spotted early that morning, and the ranger said, "Let's go track this animal." And to our surprise, the ranger would actually look at broken branches, would look at the feces, look at direction, and he was taking us. And at that point, even the guide told us, and the ranger told us, by any chance, if we meet a rhinoceros, stick with, there were 5 of us, stick together, so we will look big, so it won't attack. Stick to it. That was the plan. So while we were waiting to see this mother and baby, to our surprise, just 5 meters away, we find this animal. This massive bull, not the mother or the baby, this massive rhinoceros looked at us and just got ready to attack us. Now, this is where the story is interesting, where the crisis area comes, because in crisis there is something called crisis management. There's something called flight, freeze, follow, fight. We had all 4 of this, because in the instance I saw this animal, because throughout the journey, like I said, I am scared. I'm openly saying I am a coward when it comes to certain things, though I take risks. I was looking at all the big trees just in case if an animal attacks or run behind. First thing I did, I just ran behind the biggest tree I saw. So I kept looking at trees. I didn't know there was a thorn bush which I got bruised. I was bleeding, but I was safe. Now from where I was, I could suddenly see the tracker who said, let's stay as a team. He was the first to run. He ran for his life. Now seeing him run, my cousin started to run. So that's called follow. So what I did and what the tracker did was flight. We actually went away from the crisis. Now my cousin saw the tracker and he went followed the tracker, and then he fell down trying to follow. And then my friend Kunal, he froze. He didn't know what to do. At one point he was just standing still. The ranger, the superhero here in this story, was the only guy who remained or who went by the plan that he agreed to. He stood his ground and he had this stick which he hit a tree bark really hard to make a noise, saying, "Do not attack," as in giving a warning to the rhinoceros. To our surprise, it came close. With that noise, it moved its direction and went away. Now, why this story is interesting, like I told you, was again fight. The ranger went for the fight. The tracker and myself, we ran. That was flight. And my cousin saw the tracker running and he was following. In a crisis, these are things you do. And then certain other people freeze. Now, put yourself in this instance, what you would do. A business would do. When a crisis hits, sometimes you go at it straight away, or you completely avoid it, or you don't know what to do, you are in one place, or you follow what the other person would do, a competitor or someone else in another organization would do. Now again, the strategy you may use, it might be fly, freeze, follow, or fight, will inevitably give you a result which you can't predict. Now in the instance we ran, I could have been saved because I was behind a tree. If it attacked, I would have been saved. But I didn't see the other issues of me getting bruised by those thorn bushes which could have been poisonous. My friend Kunal froze in the same place. If the animal attacked, it would have attacked him. Ranger went straight on and tried to scare it. It got scared, but what if it didn't get scared? It would have attacked the ranger. So every decision in a crisis you take will decide what sort of an outcome it will be. Now if you take Sri Lanka for instance, a crisis that we didn't see, the East attack, thereafter COVID-19. Now I'm not going to refer COVID-19 still as COVID-19 because I think it has evolved to COVID-20 and 21 because the strain is different. Every single day you hear a new strain, you hear Delta variant, you hear the African variant, you hear the Chinese variant. I mean, there's so much that the virus has evolved that our businesses are now hampered. Now we need to go ahead with this crisis. Currently, while we are all engaged on online platforms, there are cyber attacks. So there are different forms of crises that we are facing, and how we face it now is very different. Now you have access to information, you can see what others are doing, or you can be the bold person. So it all depends. So the crisis that we are dealing with is not just for your business, but now it has moved to global, or to from an endemic to a pandemic, or it can be an endemic also. So it depends. Now the East attack was in Sri Lanka, so it affected all the businesses in Sri Lanka. COVID basically attacks all the businesses globally. Again, a cyber attack can be just to an industry or to an organization. So this change in crisis is quite pivotal, and we need to understand what is that strategy we are going to use. Are we going to fight? Are we just going to freeze? Are we going to follow someone, or are we going to fight it? Again, depending on the crisis, depending on the outcome and the situation, you might have to make that decision. So I can't come and tell this is the right strategy. That's something that organizations need to understand and to adapt. Change in culture. So this is a lion that I took in South Africa. Now, why I used the lion here was, lions fall into the cat family. If anyone knows cats, they are solitary animals. What does solitary animals mean? They live by themselves. But the only cat that lives in a group, which is also called a pride, are lions. They have completely changed the culture of how they would behave or how they would live in the wild. Now this is an interesting area. We've always told that cats are solitary animals, but why do lions do this? Obviously, it makes their life easy, but more importantly, longevity. Now think about it. Hunting as a group, you have a better chance. If one person gets injured, there is others to hunt and you can still survive. And you're not going alone, so you're less prone to injury. And even if you are injured, like I said, you have always access to food, and you are always supported by others. I mean, in the instance hyenas attacks together, if you have a larger pride, you have nothing to worry. So lions have changed the culture of cats. And now why this is important for us is, for me at least, this is one of the most important lessons that organizations, businesses and people need to realize. This change in culture. So this is a model that I've created called the evil 3 Ps. So let me explain that as well. Countries fight for power. Organizations compete for profits, and people fight for possession. These are all evil Ps. So we have nuclear wars. Why? Because we want to have power over a certain country. We would not care about the environment, not be sustainable just to make more profits, because in the end you want to impress your shareholders, so you focus only on your profits. So you don't care about the planet or the people or for the country that leads to destruction. Again, people, us wanting to collect everything, wanting to own a lot of things. Typically, still in Sri Lanka, while there is a large reduction in that, polythene bags, they constantly collect polythene bags that if we don't have it, we can't survive. Oh no, these come in handy, so we need it. So these are different things that we need to realize, where as a culture, it has to change in how we look at things. Just to give you a few facts, Iceland in 2019, in August, if I'm not mistaken, had a funeral for the first glacier which was killed by climate change. And what was funny was the fact that scientists initially predicted that the death would happen for that in 2017. In 2017, if I'm not mistaken, in July 2019, we recorded the hottest month ever the hottest month ever recorded on planet Earth. And I think June 2020 tied up for the second hottest month ever recorded on planet Earth. So what is this saying? Now, I'm not to look at the current incident with the shipwreck where plastic was, plastic pollution where it's basically ruining the coastal area and many jobs, industries, professions, and a lot of animal lives are being taken because of that one issue. But all in 2019, this was told, they found microplastics embedded deep in the Arctic ice. It is in 2019, they basically said approximately 8 million pieces of plastic pollution in the ocean. Sri Lanka just supported it with more this year. Again, annually, this was in 2019, it said that 100,000 marine animals die, that's mammals and turtles die because of pollution, and close to about 1 million seabirds are removed from planet Earth because of this pollution that we have. Now, interestingly, 30,000 BC, we had something called Stone Age, then we went to the Bronze Age, then we went to the Iron Age, and today we are in this Plastic Age, which is the most scariest that we have. And the problem that we currently have is governments, corporates, and people. The biggest problem is this: they always assume someone else will do it, and that mentality is killing the world right now. The mentality that, oh, someone else will do it. That assumption that someone else will do it, no one does it, and in the end, it leads to destruction, world's end. So organizations now and people also and countries also need to now realize the changing culture. You can't just focus on power. You can't just focus on profit or possession. You need to look at the bigger picture if you want to sustain, and that is why people still keep fighting, and we have organizations fighting for the right thing. So businesses need to realize this, and once consumers start realizing, organizations which do not adhere to this, or political leaders who does not see the bigger picture, eventually, not today, tomorrow, but eventually will not sustain in the long run. So this changing culture needs to be adapted. It shouldn't be a part of the CSR. It should be part of the core business. It should be part of our day, not just an activity we do once in a while. It should be in our daily activities. And countries, we should be appointing leaders who look at the bigger picture, not just gaining power. So this is something that, in terms of changing culture, that I want to speak. Now, interestingly, this is not the vial, but I did want to share this COVID strain is the fact that it actually comes from the vial, right? Because of human intervention. Again, the origins, they basically say it's from bats or monkeys from China. Again, that's where we stand. But an interesting area that we learned with COVID was, let me put it like this: COVID itself, I can write a book on lessons learned, not 100, but about 202 lessons. Absolutely taught us a lot of things. Again, it's a sad incident, not just for Sri Lanka, but for worldwide citizens. But again, COVID basically changed the way we have to look at brand management during a crisis. So that is what I want to talk about right now. So with while organizations still strive to create brands in the traditional way while they continue, with COVID, their strategy changed with this crisis. So this can be implemented at any given point of a crisis. So what was very important here was go beyond the call of duty. Now brands which went beyond call of duty really retained their heart share with the people. Distillery brands globally, certain brands moved from their core businesses and moved into hand sanitizer business because it was easy, it was competitive. Certain other businesses which was not in the relevant area of their business itself moved away to support the cause. So when you go beyond the call of duty, that enhances your brand value, and that's what a lot of organizations globally did. Creative communication. So you had brands such as Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Audi, producing new logos, creative communication just to show social distancing, and this was done in the past. Why I'm sharing this case study right now is this can be replicated in our thinking on how do we adapt when it comes to brand management for future issues, future crises we may have. We spoke about sustainable mindset. Even though business profits might hit the right now, organizations which do not look at a sustainable mindset, people already have a negative connotation because of a lot of the issues that we are facing. Like I mentioned, the fact, hottest month, pollution, a lot of these issues are raising awareness to people where they now know which brands that they should associate. Again, with this, it was very interesting was employees first. So now, while we always see brand is how people perceive us externally, some organizations fail to see the internal aspect of it. Employees first is a mandatory because in the belief where I come, I don't believe customer is king. I don't believe customer is king. I believe employee is king. You treat your employees well as kings, they will treat your customers as kings. So we have to first understand that as soon as business owners start looking at the customers as the king and they start just focusing on them and ill-treating or not focusing on the employees, they forget the fact that the person who in the end gives the service is not the leadership, it is the employees. So if the employees don't deliver it properly, the whole connotation or the whole system falls into place. So I think that's why where you have Google, if I'm not mistaken, during the pandemic gave about $1,000 to each employee to equip their homes to work from home. I mean, not go take this example and go to your bosses if there are managerial people here and say, hey, I think we also need certain equipment. Y'all are going to give your resignation letter upfront. But it's interesting how organizations took a stand. We had local organizations saying, we are not going to fire anyone. We had certain people saying, no, we are going to support the families of employees who had passed away because of the pandemic. And that really shows the brand, it shows who they are, because a lot of people have value statements which we never show. They talk about compassion, integrity, all these are statements which are on the website. It really comes out during a crisis to really know what a brand and organization is. Finally, communicate, and again communicate. People get scared when brands don't communicate. They are scared whether they are financially not doing well, if they are about to collapse, if they are about to close shop. So you need to constantly communicate because research says that it reassures people with regard to a brand or organization when you communicate. It's similarly, an example I would give is you communicating with a friend. As long as when you stop communicating, the other person doesn't know whether you are living dead or what you're up to. So constant communication shows that okay, this is fine, they are okay, and that reassurance you need. So the Big 5 crisis brand strategy is again a thing that I created, understanding, changing brand management. So I want to keep good on my time. I was given 45 minutes. So today we discussed change in new product development, change in communication, change in technology, change in leadership, change in crisis, change in culture, and change in brand management. Now what is important is, in life, you should not hope for change, but change for hope. Organizations which think, you know what, this will happen and not make changes or implement certain things, it will never happen. The perfect example is this leopard itself. Absolutely adaptable. If they don't have their normal food, they can survive on other dead carcasses, they'll attack a bird, they'll survive on anything. These animals are able to live in the hottest conditions in deserts and even in cold climates as well. So you'll see them in Himalayas, snow leopards, or you even will see them in foreign plains. These animals can adapt to any situation. So now if they don't, they won't succeed. So in businesses also, what I always say is in life, it might not just be in business, don't hope for change, you should change for hope. So I think that leads to that ends the conversation on the lessons learned from the wild and us speaking about this so-called inevitable change. And these are areas where I found in terms from my experience, but then again, anyone can learn a lesson on change, not just from the wild, but it can be different forms of application. It can be a sport, it can be a different form of passion. And my passion has always been wildlife, and this is what I have to share with you. Uh, if you have any questions, I'm happy to take. Trust me, it is very tough to do a webinar. I constantly do webinars. It's constantly very tough without seeing an audience. Just looking at my screen and looking at an empty wall, it's very tough. So sometimes you have to understand certain areas. So, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to take and explain.
Thank you, sir. As I said, as he said rightly, it's a tough job. So you delivered perfectly. So it's a Q&A time. I'm hoping there will be some questions from the audience, especially after seeing all those magnificent pictures.
Hi, Sarath. Just a quick question from my end. So there were a lot of intricate details mentioned in this. So how long did it take you to compile this book actually?
For me to compile this book?
Yeah.
Actually, it's a very short book. It's a very, very small book. It actually took me about 2-3 months because during the pandemic, I had nothing to do. It was the first lockdown. And I had this idea of all these lessons when I went into the wild. Actually, I decided to write this after my last safari in Nepal, after we got attacked by the rhinoceros. Because at that point, it struck me, oh shit, this is flight, freeze, follow. And then I realized all the lessons all the stories I had lessons. So during the pandemic, I had nothing to do. And I thought, okay, I said I'll write it in 2 months' time, or 1 month time, I just wrote it. So it's a very small book, but I mean, it didn't take much time because all the stories were already there, and it's something that I really enjoyed. And I mean, the first lockdown was really bad. You had nothing to do. I couldn't even walk out of the house. So there you go. It was very easy.
Right. So technically, it was a quarantine baby.
There you go.
Right. Thank you.
So we've also got a question saying and a comment. Hi, Sarath, really enjoyed the presentation, but wish your pictures were in color instead because they were really good. Are they available in your book?
Yeah, there are few pictures, and that's in color, yes. Yeah, sorry, for the presentation, I kind of feel it's a good, why I actually use black and white is I want to really focus on the lesson and that one topic. If not, sometimes the images kind of, when it's colorful, it kind of distracts. And I guess that might be a wrong interpretation and something I need to change, but thank you so much.
Any more questions from the audience?
I'll just say one thing. It can be any business leader, and this is, I mean, if there are CEOs here or a manager or an executive here, even, our life all revolves around getting up in the morning and work home, or basic chores that we do. I always encourage, the reason I wrote this book is not to sell this book, and in no way that I look at that book in that context. My only way form is to inspire people to travel, and it's not wildlife travel, it can be different things. Move out of your comfort zone, that's where you start learning. When you move out of that, I mean, it's like a computer. You restart the computer, it's fresh as new. Sometimes you need to move from the current zone, go out, you start learning a lot of things. So that's very important. So that I had two objectives. One was to promote tourism in Sri Lanka, and the other one was conservation, and also to make sure that people thereafter looking at this start traveling and exploring and learning.
Great. Any more questions from the audience? Well, I guess not. So Is there? No. Okay. So basically,
on LinkedIn, when you all reach Bileeta, I mean, anything, any questions you all have later on, even I'm happy to take on thereafter.
so Sarath, I want to take this moment to. Okay, there's a question somebody has put before let's read that. Okay, so there's a question. Sai Sarath, when you take the scenario of communication in the session as a company, we have to go beyond the communication internally to externally. Can you explain that scenario?
Oh, sure. Can you? That question is a bit vague. Can that person speak on? Can that person come online and speak, or only chatting is available?
It's on
Yes,
the chat.
yeah, I'm the person who gave the question.
Okay,
So,
please.
Sarath, yeah. So basically, my question was like, because when you are working in an organization, we have to go beyond the internal and external internally, because your scenarios basically is like the rhinos who are communicative between us. So now, if you take an organization perspective, so we are not only communicating inside, we are going to the external parties as well. So I just need some, like, if you are going beyond in that level, what we can take, what we can learn from the wild.
Oh, absolutely. So that's a really good question. Internal communication, external communication are completely different things again. Business to business, industry to industry, certain things you can share, certain things you can't share. Public quoted companies, of course, you have all the information on annual reports, so there is no form of communication. Now, from the why I took the story specifically is the fact that different ways of communication. So how things have changed now. When you're face to face, for example, now in a corporate internally, face to face, you can have the discussion. Now, when you're not there, how these rhinoceros use their poop, or they are done as a form of a bulletin board, is an interesting way that it's a novel way of thinking, and that's exactly why I said externally us communicating. Now, with certain customers, you communicate on WhatsApp, right? I mean, I have so many banks, I have so many insurance suppliers dealing with me on WhatsApp. So communication can have a different platform, face to face or different. So that's the example that I brought in. I hope that explained to the context that you're asking me.
Yes, sir.
But again, keeping in mind, every business to business or to industry, like I keep saying that example, because some people think, oh, that's not practical for me, which is very clear. So if someone gives me specific industry, I'm happy to give an explanation with regard to that industry as well. But thank you for that question. Good question.
Thank you.
Right. Interesting questions coming. Any more questions from the audience?
I just wanted to ask, judging from your profile, it seems like you are you held some positions where it might take most of your time. So I just want to ask, how did you make time to travel? And I mean, you have been traveling quite a lot. So I just want to know, with the current world, it's too, how do I say this? It's a bit too hard for people to travel like you did, but like what made it possible for you to travel, and what kept you going on?
I think that's a really good question. To answer that, I'll have to explain another story if you don't mind. This might take about at least 2 minutes, if that's okay, Viveka. That's fine. Excellent. So I believe in life, happiness is in the end where you don't look at your book and say, oh gosh, your bank and say, oh gosh, you have 100 million, you are happy. In life, you don't strive for money. In my opinion, we strive for happiness. Now, there are 6 important elements for that. One is work, one is family, one is health, one is faith, one is friends, and another one is passions. Now, why I said all these 6 is, in our daily lives, we have to juggle these 6 balls or these 6 areas that we have. Funnily, a lot of people focus on their career because they need to make money, and that's their form of way, and they just look at money, work, and then family. And at the age of 60, 70, when they retire, when they can, when they look at their money, they are like, my only regret is if I did this. That word regret should never be there in anyone's life at that point. So why I'm sharing these lessons is also the fact that one of the biggest areas that I address is go for happiness, not for money. Now I realize at age 670, I don't want to follow my passions and I don't want to regret. And not just passions, if you even take health, a person, if you just focus on your work, family, and faith, and your passions, and you neglect your health, you might have a lot of money and you might have all the friends, but at age 40, if your health declines, you might not be able to work, you might not be able to do the things that you really like. That it's a very intricate thing. So I still work. I'm currently working for a university called Bileeta University in Sri Lanka. I still do that. I am now currently studying for my doctorate as well. I am also looking at doing little travels whenever I can, and that's because I look at this mix. And there is no perfect way of doing it, and I can't tell you the model. I can only say is there are 6 elements. If you neglect one, you do everything. You might have your passion, you might have friends, you might have what you call work, everything. But if you don't have a family, what's the point? Who are you going to share it with? So in life, these 6 are important, and that's how I prioritize. So I realized at a very early stage that travel is one of my passions, not just travel, wildlife travel. So I somehow every holidays where I don't have to take too much leave, I just take that 2 weeks or 1 week, and we start doing these travels. And even in Sri Lanka, whenever I can, I invest in that. So you have to prioritize. So again, versus certain things now, how much of time you want to invest on your friends, family. If you manage that properly and what makes you happy in the end of the day, that should really give you the answer to how you can find time to do the things you like. I hope I answered.
Definitely, sir. Thank you so much.
So we've got another question. Hi Sarath, I just started my career life. Basically, it's kind of like I'm new to the wild. What are the advices you can give to freshers like me?
Oh, that's the easiest question, and thank you for that question. Just experience it. Don't go to do too much of things. Don't try to implement too many things. Learn, make mistakes. All my lessons are from mistakes that I did, which I learned, attacks I happened, which could have almost ended my life. Getting into a career, be open. That's why I keep saying, telling people, don't just restrict yourself just to your work. Open yourself, do certain different things, challenge yourself in different things, or embrace change. So that's a fantastic question, because don't go with steady mindset. Okay, I want to go up the corporate ladder. This is what I'm going to do. Learn. All your mistakes are going to someday become your best lessons, and that's going to really drive you to the very top. So all the very best, Michelle, with that.
Thank you so much.
Hello. Yeah, Sarath, small question. You talk about wild and wild animals. So, like, as I believe they made decisions without for the incident, for the what they face, and without any bias or the personal boundaries. So in that case, when it's come to an organization, there will be always favorations, boundaries, and pre-described objectives. So how you like explain why that lessons learned from the wild to that organization culture?
Sure, excellent. So if you take the lions, I spoke really well about them in terms of changing culture, and where it's really good where they are moved from the cats. And a lot of people, if you ask, give me an animal who you see as a perfect leader, they generally say the lion, which is the worst thing to say.
Yeah.
It's a wrong statement. Geese are probably the best case learned. But to answer your question, if you take lions, they undercut each other, and there'll be someone who will try to take over, try to attack you, and then you see the main lion, the alpha lion, who will attack small lions, who kill small lions in the pride itself to retain its leadership. That's not the right way of doing it. So lessons in the wild does not only tell you the right thing, it might tell you the wrong thing, so you might not do the wrong thing and the right thing. So looking at the wild now, I share with you a lot of positives. Now in life, like I said, my Areas where I failed or I almost died were lessons for me. That wasn't a positive. So even in the wild, some of the negative things you need to take in the positive context, so you don't do that. In an organization, if a leader or if there is undercutting that culture, that has to change. And perfect harm is not. But again, look at the positives again. The lion, the pride, together they can succeed as a unit. But then again, there is always going to be fight for power. Certain things can never be changed. So you need to adapt and you need to identify how do you, at what point do you lead. Now in an organization, lions, when a male lion grows, it comes to a point that it leaves the pride and joins another pride or takes over another pride. So you need to know whether it's enough in a given organization, you have done enough, now it's your time to move, or it's not going to work. So that decision, it's all with experience you will know. So certain instances you can fight and go to the very top and retain it, or you stay in the pride and later on you move away. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. It's really satisfied. It's really satisfying. Thank you.
Excellent.
Okay, do we have any more questions?
Last one, Sarath, here. Actually, you spoke about the Masimara, that wildebeest migration across different rivers. So I have seen, I'm a very good fan of that particular situation, and the question that I want to ask is that, when it comes to that particular situation, we cannot neglect the predators like crocodiles. So have you written anything about the crocodiles and their leadership things, because they are sudden attackers. So sudden attackers means we need to plan the risk with the sudden attacks. And also the wildebeest are considered like kind of a brainless animals. They are actually they get stressed quickly and they run here and there. They don't strategize. So what is the lesson that you can provide through the behavior of crocodiles? Have you written in that things in the book?
So that's a very good question for me to write about crocodiles. I still not got attacked by a crocodile, so I might not figure a place where I can go and get attacked by a crocodile and probably really understand it. But on a real note, crocodiles, every animal, Hemaka was the name, right?
Hemaka.
Okay, Hemaka, every animal you can learn a positive and a negative. Every animal, like I said. Every animal there is a positive and negative. It's how you interpret it. Crocodiles are fantastic animals. They are opportunistic, guys. So they stay in that riverbank. They know exactly where the migration happens. So easy kill. Sometimes stealth mode. What does stealth mode means? A good person to make your result. If you're running around too much, you won't be able to get your meal. So they wait underwater. They'll be just still until the prey comes close to them, drink water, and they kill it. So what does that teach you? Patience. You don't get things the time you want, and animals don't come drink water the time the crocodile wants. So the crocodile can't get on land and go chasing animals. So you have to be patient. So those are some of the virtues you can learn. Again, wildebeest, yes, while they might have a lot of their downfall in terms of brain capacity, there are a lot of things. Like I said, we have to look every time what's a lesson, good or bad a lesson. That's what so my interpretation, and I completely, though I have studied and I still encourage studies, my interpretation of teaching is my lessons from the wild, and I think you can learn something from someone every single time. I hope I answered the question.
Yes, of course, Sarath, it's very insightful. Thanks a lot.
If I get attacked by a crocodile, I'll let you know.
But I really like crocodiles, that's all.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so I'm assuming questions are over.
I have one question, Sarath. Sarath, you were a frequent traveler and you couldn't travel for almost last couple of years because of this COVID. So your lifestyle is changed to the new normal life. Out of this, what is the best lesson you learned, and will that lesson will impact or have any impacts to you, like when you travel back now, when the things comes
to the normal and after the COVID, what is the lesson you are going to apply for your traveling life?
Super. Again, that's a fantastic question.
Yeah, I'm a traveler too, so I suffer a lot without traveling. So,
yeah. So it was the toughest thing for us staying at home and for me, but it shouldn't stop, right? So my book also, there is one chapter called The Pandemic. It talks about because of the pandemic, I couldn't go to see the snow leopards. Now, but I actually start praising my book. Why I'm promoting that is there is an area where I really focused on Sri Lanka as a country. Now you have to see there are things you can control and you can't control. I can't control overseas travel with certain animals, but Sri Lanka is absolutely blessed with animals, provided that these politicians and these decision makers do retain it properly. And I think I'm rather vocal about it, given the fact that it's quite important. Sri Lanka is absolutely blessed. In a 3 hours drive, we can see a leopard. In 3 hours time, I can see dolphins, and in half an hour's time, from there, I can go and see a leopard. In Bileeta. I mean, Sri Lanka is absolutely blessed with a lot of things. So you have to make amendments, and then you start localizing and doing things differently. So you shouldn't stop what you like. So your experience is different. Now I always started. My passion was going overseas, going to new countries, doing something. But there's a lot to discover in Sri Lanka, and I think you may cover that. But I think she does hiking, right? I mean, though she can't go overseas for a hike, there are so many places in Sri Lanka she wouldn't have hiked, or she might do it again because of the new experience. So it shouldn't stop. I know it's tough, and the lesson that we need to learn is sometimes you need to adapt. Now, if you can't go overseas, you adapt to the current area what you have and make do. Now, the last few days, because I couldn't even, the last few months, even we couldn't go to Yalaveer Park to this last 2 months, I actually started WFX, that's Wildlife from Home. I live in Baktaramulla. Little did I know that I had plenty of birds. I have monkeys coming and then porcupines in the night. So you have to make changes. You know, when I was stuck at home, I still had my camera. And every single time I work and I suddenly hear a bird, I just pause the meeting and say, guys, quickly, and I quickly see where the bird is, take a picture, and I do that. So you need to make amendments, shifts in lives, and it shouldn't stop. But as soon as things open, we'll start traveling, and I want people to start traveling in Sri Lanka because there is so many businesses depending on it also, right? There are small shops, there are vendors, then there are hotels, restrooms. So I hope things come to normal and we also get to travel.
Thanks, Sarath.
All right, so I'll just wait a few seconds to see if there are any more last minute questions. It's becoming very interesting.
I also have another small question. Sarath, I just want to know, like, according to the wildlife and all, what do you think about the leadership? Is it a natural thing, or someone can learn or teach that? What do you think?
Leadership is something that most leaders have it inbuilt, but it's something that can be taught. Again, there are different leadership skills as well, and depending on where you fall in that category, certain leadership areas you can teach, certain areas you need to have it inbuilt. But being a leader should not restrict because you are not born with it. And I personally feel that a leader will never come and say, "Oh, I am a leader." That person will be humble enough to say, "I have a lot to learn." And in that context, that means any leader has to learn. So to answer your question, simply put, anyone can learn to become a leader, but there are certain people who come with that skill, that knack, and that really helps. Even in the wild, through trauma and certain things, you find leaders, you find animals taking more prides, taking leadership, finding collisions and doing certain things. They are not born with it, but they adapt to it. So it is possible for anyone.
All right, thank you.
Right, so again, I'll wait a few more seconds to see if any more questions. Sarath, I think you're enjoying answering the questions more than doing the presentation.
You know why? It's very, like I said, for me, it was so boring. Is the fact that it's very hard because seeing faces. Now I'm just looking at my own screen. If I saw 1 or 2 faces or interactions, that's the easiest way of communication, so you understand the pulse. But thanks to Bileeta, we were able to do it. But again, it's an interesting area. I mean, like I said, change in everything is important for all of us, like businesses, technology, communication.
Absolutely. All right, looks like we have come to the end of questions. So bear with me for a few more minutes. I do want to do the word of thanks. So first, I want to thank in this moment to Sarath for taking the time, sharing your knowledge with all of us. You are absolutely, truly a great marketer, a speaker, an athlete, which you just proved here when we heard all your adventures and stories, all the hikings and everything. So thank you to you and all the participants who participated for the webinar. I mean, as truly a Sri Lankan technology solution provider, real aim and objective is to help all our stakeholders to do better and become better every single day. So that's why we are taking all these little steps. So we at Bileeta, we really hope today's webinar on lessons learned from the wild would have given you some valuable points to face the inevitable change. And the 60 minutes of investment was a positive ROI for you personally and for your professional careers as well. So as I mentioned at Bileeta, as we're the leading ERP solution provider, we would be really happy to help you, consult you, and be your partner if you need any help in changing and adapting to this inevitable change as Sarath has been speaking to us. So the numbers were shared, and do call us if there are anything. Before I conclude the webinar, I would like to ask if everybody would like to switch on their cams so we can take a picture if nobody's shy. So if you can switch on your camera, I would really like to take a screenshot to make this day memorable. Few cams coming up, the rest of you as well, please. Great, excellent. Right, I'll just give it a moment till few of you all also switch it on. You all keep seeing me and Sarath through the whole while, so we would also like to see your faces just a little bit, for few seconds at least. Is that all? Yeah. All right. So I'm going to take the first picture now. Any more coming? All right, seems to be it. So thank you very much again. Appreciate it very much. Thank you, Sarath, and thank you everybody for your participation. Have a lovely evening, and we'll see you again hopefully soon in another webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, Bileeta, for having me. Stay safe, guys.